Where do you feel safe? Where do you go to when you're afraid, scared? Life is hard. It might be a place, it might be a person. Makes you feel differently. You know, for me, typically, I feel safe in my house. Right? It's my space. I can control who's there. I can control who's not there. But there are times where I'm reminded that that is a false feeling. It was a time before Amanda and I were married. I was pastoring in Michigan, and I had a parsonage to myself. I had this 4-bedroom house. And so my house often became like, we were like 2 parking spots from the church. You know, it was one of those kind of parsonages. And my house kind of became a hangout spot for a lot of younger guys on the weekends. They would come, and one particular weekend, we're watching the slam dunk contest. All right? So we're watching this contest, and we can see these red and blue lights around us. Now, this was not uncommon in this house. It was right on a highway, and so people got pulled over in front of the house all the time. But they were lingering. They were there for a while. And so I started to get curious what in the world was going on. So I started to look out the windows and noticed that in the parking lot of the church, there was a black van. And there were police cars surrounding the black van. And I thought, that's strange. It's odd. But we were kind of looking out the window then to figure out, what's going on. This seems like a little more than a traffic stop. There had the whole exit to the parking lot blocked off. So we watched for a little while, and then we started to see police coming from around the building with their guns drawn, walking towards this van. Now, this is way more interesting than the slam dunk contest at this point. So we're all gathered around this window, staring out at this black van. It's literally like probably from me to the wall away from us. And these police are just walking around. And suddenly, we see them, kind of like you'd see on the TV shows. They throw these doors open, and then they just start pulling people out of the van. We can't even tell how many it are. There's all kind of people being pulled out, thrown on the ground, handcuffed. It was wild. And we thought, man, it's crazy. It was like being a part of Cops or something. We got to see it live and in person. Went home, didn't think anything of it. Till we opened the paper the next day. Here's the story. A year before that, there was a robbery in town. Apparently had something to do with drugs. They stole a bunch of things out of this house. The guys got away. Nobody had any idea. The day before, there was a drive-by shooting in town of a red Oldsmobile Cutlass. And the police couldn't figure out why this guy was shot, what was going on, any of that, until they realized one of the guys in the robbery that they had caught drove a red Oldsmobile Cutlass. They put this together that the drive-by shooting was an attempt to kill this man. They killed the wrong guy. The drive-by happened in a black van. These 4 guys are sitting from me to the wall with a van full of guns that they had just murdered somebody in. 3 of them are in prison right now for life, for first-degree murder. And I'm watching it out my living room window. I felt completely safe. And I was not. That feeling of safety that we have sometimes is an illusion, isn't it? But we find out today in the Word of God that we are promised that God is our refuge. He is our strength. He's an ever-present help in times of trouble. The safety that we can find in God is real. It's different than what we might find in people or in places here in our world. The dangers are the same. but his power and presence is different. So in Joshua 20, we see this talk of what's called the cities of refuge. And these were places of safety for people. And as we look closely at what it is that's set up there, we're going to be reminded of how God is that refuge for us and what that means for our lives today. So in Joshua 20, we have fast forwarded a whole bunch of chapters here. So I'm going to give you a little cliff notes here of what we've missed in Joshua. So we were in chapter 10 last week, and we saw this campaign where Joshua and his army grabbed a lot of the promised land. And then even looked at chapter 12, where it lists all the kings that were killed in this process. So at the end of that, when we get to chapter 13, God and Joshua have a talk. And God says to Joshua, Joshua, you're getting old. Some of you had this talk with God, right? Getting old. He says, Joshua, you're not going to be alive to see all this happen. You're not going to live long enough for me to deliver all this land. So, God says, I promise I'm going to drive everybody out. I'm going to deliver my people the land. But what I need you to do is I need you to divide up the land the way that I've said it was going to be divided. To give all the tribes their part of the promised land. So we have like 9 chapters of tribes and names and groups that if that sounds really interesting to you, go read it when you get home, okay? But all it is the division of land. Then when we get to chapter 20, we see this is really 9.5 tribes getting their land. 2.5 had it already before they crossed the Jordan. Now there's one tribe, the Levites, who doesn't have a certain spot of land. The Levites, there's lots of reasons for that. Chief among them that they were in charge of leading God's people into worship, in charge of the temple. And so they didn't have a section of land. They had 48 cities. And now this portion is where they take 6 of those cities and they make them what's called a city of refuge. Joshua didn't make this up. This comes from the law. Numbers 35 tells us, where God lays out in the law how these were to be a part of his people. And what we see here is simply a place where people could run to and find refuge when they had no other place to go. And there's 4 things that we see there about what the cities of refuge offered them. And this is what God offers us. The refuge that he offers us when we're in times of trouble. The first thing we see that is offered to them is an opportunity for justice. Here is the situation. There's a specific crime that's happened in this as we read Joshua 20. Somebody has been killed. And it is accidental, unplanned, and so this gives them an opportunity. If you have accidentally killed somebody or believe it's an accident, you can run to this city of refuge. By law, one person in the family of the one who'd been killed was allowed to be the family's avenger. They were allowed to go and take the life of the one who had taken the life of their loved one. So you're running away, literally, from somebody who's coming to kill you, who is allowed legally to take your life. When you get to the city of refuge, they don't let you in. It says right there, the first thing that they do is they have a trial. The judge comes out to the gate, and they gather, what in Phil's translation, the elders, the leaders, and they hear a case. They have a trial right then and there. You don't wait in jail. They don't gather evidence. They find what evidence is there. The family's given the opportunity to have witnesses, and the story's told. And then the judges decide, was it on accident or was it intentional? If it's intentional, you don't get to come into the city. If it's unintentional, they allow you to come in. This is the opportunity for justice to be had in this situation. A just judgment to happen. Even if the death is unintentional, the one who killed somebody can come into that city of refuge, but it tells us outside that city, they're still allowed to be killed by the avenger from that family. There's still justice to be had. So this is the opportunity for this person who's made this poor choice, who's gotten themselves into this difficult situation, to find justice. And we are reminded by that God is the place we come to for justice. In Psalm 31:20, God says this, "You hide them in the shelter of your presence, safe from those who conspire against them." It's a reminder, we don't find justice in the world. Things aren't going to be made right by the standards of the world. And there are things, as the psalmist said, people that conspire against us in life. Things that seek to destroy us, things that seek to harm us, things that seek to bring our lives, things that are not good. In God, we find refuge from that. We find safety from that. A place for Him to make right what cannot be made right by the ways and wisdom of the world. God doesn't just leave us out in the cold to be unjustly picked off by the things of this world that are against us. He offers us a refuge to find justice. The second thing we see there offered is a hiding place. Outside of the city, these men or women are allowed to be killed. Inside of the city, they're safe. They get to hide in there. Nobody's allowed to come in and kill them. In Psalm 27, verse 5, the psalmist writes, "God will conceal me when trouble comes. He will hide me in His sanctuary. He will place me out of reach on a high rock." Notice it says that God will conceal me when trouble comes. Not from trouble coming, but when trouble comes. This city of refuge, this hiding place that God offers us, is God saying storms of life are coming. Tornadoes happen, right? He's the basement. He's where you can go to when the storms come. And you can hide there and be safe. He's a hiding place for us when the storms come in until they pass. When the winds are too strong for us to stand against them. He hides us from the dangerous effects of life in the world around us when we hide in Him and trust in Him. Number 3, we see a city of refuge offers a refreshed spirit. Put yourself in the shoes of the people that had to run to these cities. First of all, you have just taken somebody's life. Presumably accidentally. That has to be a traumatic thing, right? You already have some issues. Now, somebody says, you better run because immediately somebody's coming to kill you. So now you have to run, meaning I have to leave my family. I have to leave my home. I got to leave my job. I got to leave my life. I got to leave everything to run to some city that I don't know anybody in. My whole life, because of one mistake, is changed, is gone, is turned upside down. And then you get to the city gate and they don't let you in. They have a trial and they make you relive the whole experience. Everybody's going to talk about what you did. And everybody's going to know what you did. So imagine that moment when they say, you're innocent, and the gates open, and you get to walk in. It's like when you're out working in a crawl space, right? And you get to take a shower, right? When you're out mowing the lawn on one of those brutally hot August days, and you get that glass of cold water. You've been out in the heat for all day, and you get to step into the air conditioning for the first time, right? Or it's freezing outside because it snowed and you didn't expect it, and you get to put your hands over a warm fire. That refreshment that you feel is instantaneous, isn't it? It happens right away. That's what we are offered in the refuge of God. A refreshed spirit. It doesn't change the things you've been through, but it immediately changes how you feel about them and how your life feels about them. Isaiah 32:2 says, God promised to refresh Israel as a river in a desert or a cool shadow of a large rock in a hot and weary land. God's refuge is a river in the desert. We live in the desert. We live in this dry place where we can't find the refreshment our spirits need. We look at the rivers of the world and they are dry. They have nothing to offer us. But in the refuge of Jesus Christ, we find that refreshment. We come in from those dry times of life and we find living water that changes how we feel. But finally, a city of refuge offered a renewed hope for a new life. Because outside of that city, the standing of life was pretty bleak, right? You leave the city and you're right back to facing this possibility of being killed. Now, you might say, that doesn't feel like a new life. I got to live in this city, the city of refuge. I can never go back to my family. I can never go back to the old way of life. This doesn't seem like justice. Well, in the law, when blood was shed, blood was required as payment. So that's why the family member was allowed to take your life, to pay for that. But in the city of refuge, if you waited there, whoever was high priest on the day you walked in, the day they died, their blood paid the price for what you did. And you were allowed to leave and start a new life. When the high priest died, what you did was forgiven. We live in that refuge of God because of the guilt of the things that we've done. But the good news for us is our high priest, Jesus Christ, has died for us. And his blood has covered and paid the price for all those things that we have done that could keep us from the life that God wants for us. So we don't have to wait in the city of refuge. We don't have to stand around and wait for a high priest to die. He already has. But when we come to that refuge, instantly we are offered the opportunity to find new life. To leave that old life behind. To let go of the mistakes of the past and the problems that they bring. And the good news is this. It's not just accidental things like the cities of refuge. He paid a price for everything. Every sin, every mistake, every problem, the price has been paid. There's nothing you can do or could do or will do that could pay that price, so Jesus did it for you. Now, in our culture, we have begun to talk about, not begun, for a while we've talked about safe spaces. And this is a really loaded cultural term now. It has become political over the last few years. As people think these safe spaces, they've developed in universities or at workplaces, and they really have become a place where, on one perspective, they're a place where people who are marginalized or looked down upon can come and they're safe to be who they are. And from the other side, they're a place where other perspectives go to die. There's no freedom to talk about our views. You have to believe in one way. Safe spaces go all the way back actually to the women's movement in the 60s. And that word began as the safe space for women who were being abused to come and literally find refuge and hide. And it's been transformed in different ways through the years. But I want to talk about a different safe space. There was a pastor in Florida who took this a different way. He started a city, a village. It is now named literally as in Joshua. It's called a city of refuge. And a little over half of the population of the city of refuge is convicted sex offenders. Like here in Florida, there are laws for them about what they can do. On this list, you can't go near schools. You can't, even things like libraries and bus stops and swimming pools. There's lots of places they can't go that have these restrictions. And so they started this Christian community where these people could come together and they could find life, where they could find healing, where they were given counseling, where all the requirements of their probation could be met. They find this place where they can live, where they can find healing and hope and move forward, hopefully in a new life, and overcome the mistakes of their past and be something new. Now, when you hear about that, it's a little cringeworthy, right? We might hear it and think, I couldn't imagine living in a place like that. And yet at the same time we hear it and think, but those people need to hear about Jesus too, right? And those people need to come and find a place for healing and hope. They need a city of refuge because God offers them the same thing. God offers them a place to come to find His safety, a place to find justice, a place to overcome the mistakes of their past, a place to be safe from the effects of the world around them, a place to find hope for a new life. Now, here's the really amazing part of the story. Ready? I said half the city was convicted sex offenders. That means the other half isn't. And the other half is people who've chosen to live their lives in a place that offers refuge to those who can't find it anywhere else. And so as we looked at all these scriptures and talked about all that God offers us, we think about what it means for us, how Jesus is my refuge. But friends, what I want you to hear today is that God is telling you all those things because He's calling you to be a city of refuge for a world that's in desperate need of the hope that we have found in Jesus Christ. We already have our new life. We don't have to live in the city of refuge anymore. We know what Jesus has done for us. We've received that hope. We've been changed. So who we are as people now is to be that refuge for those who don't know. Who we should be as a church is a refuge that people from the outside who are wounded, who are hurting, who are lost can come in and they can hear that in Jesus Christ there's a safe space, a real refuge from the brokenness of the world. A real place where you can find out what love means for your lives. Are you willing to be a city of refuge to the world that's in desperate need of it? I'm going to call the worship team to come up. And as they're coming up, they're going to sing this song about the heart of God. That no matter who we are, no matter what we've done, no matter where we've been, no matter what mistakes we made, we can come to the heart of God and we can find the love of Jesus Christ. We believe that. We trust that. We have a hope and a future because of it. But the question before you today is, maybe you're lost. Maybe you haven't found that. Maybe you don't know His refuge. And you need to come under the shadow of His wing today. The doors of His heart are open for you to come find the love that you can't find in this world. To find a hope for a new life. But if you're there and you've found the heart of God, your calling is to now take this heart to the world around you. To be a refuge for those who have no other place to feel safe. To offer a chance for new life to those who haven't found it in Jesus Christ yet. So as we sing this today, I want to challenge you to begin to think of the people in your life around you that need a refuge, that don't know where to run, but you do. Lead them to the gates. Let them find the justice protection and power and love that Jesus Christ has for them, no matter who they are, no matter where they've been. We know the real safe space. We're called to lead people there. I'm going to challenge you as we sing this to prayerfully consider who it is God is leading you to lead to His heart and find what they need in Him. Let's stand together, and as we sing this, if you don't know it, just listen to the words and let God challenge your heart and your life. Let Him